So the philosophy behind giving is that, we have been all born in a privileged society. We have been fortunate that we've had parents who have been quite affluent. They have given us education, they have given us good values. I think, and therefore I feel it's our sort of obligation to help everybody. And if you look at it, every religion of the world says that giving is important. And therefore, whatever religion you follow, I think it makes a difference. Second thing is that there is a lot of joy in giving. When you see the impact that you can have on the lives of people, the smiles on their faces, I think that is a joy which is not easily, you can't get that. And finally, I believe that it's in your own self-interest, because if you believe in rebirth, as I do, then whatever good you do has to come back to you, and that itself is important. The way giving has evolved in our family is that even my grandfather, he was not very well off. In fact, he started with hardly any money, but he still wanted to give back to society. And in some ways, I think he did something very revolutionary. So for instance, he came from a small village in Rajasthan, but he had as his first student somebody who is what now called Dalit, and at that time a Harijan. Besides that, he opened a school for girls. These were, I think, very revolutionary steps in the early 1900s. Over time, it has evolved. Now we are doing things in education, we are doing things in health, water. These we feel are more the challenges in the country today. And we are trying to do it in scale, and we're trying to do it in partnerships. So I think that's the evolution. So what is our approach to partnership? I think we believe that there are the issues that this country has they are very large and they are unique. So they are not solutions that you can replicate from the rest of the world and bring it here. You can get some learnings from them, but I think you need much more of our own solution. And for that, you need, if you have a few other like-minded people or smart people working together, I think you can get a better solution. So that's our belief in partnerships. Also, when you evolve a program, there is a learning curve. You do make mistakes. It takes time to evolve. And if you have learned it, I believe it's better to share. So we have partnerships. The first partnership we have is actually with the government itself, because my belief is that in India, if you have to make an impact, you have to do it on scale. And to do scale, you have to work with government. No agency, not even the biggest, even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation can do it on their own. And therefore, partnerships with government is important. Partnerships with other NGOs, as I said, people who've done work in the same field, they have experiences. I think partnerships with them is important. Partnership with donors, future donors is important, because it's only then that can your program succeed. So there's been conversations with donors in the last few years. So for instance, we have IPI, or the Indian Philanthropy Initiative, where we get donors to come together and share their experiences. I think what helps in all this is, first of all, it inspires you. You also, if you get people who have done a lot and you see them, it pushes you to do a little more. Secondly, I think I've found that some of the sessions are very technical, and it helps you to understand what the issues are. Thirdly, it gives a big exposure to people who are doing different things. So it helps you choose. If you've not made up your mind as to where you want to go, it helps you choose. Sometimes it helps you understand the legal formalities of how do you form a trust or a Section 25 company, or whatever else. It puts you in touch with other people who are working in the sector. So there are lots of advantages. So the younger generation is now actually generating a fair amount of wealth, much more than what it was done in the previous generations. And many of them have come from actually very, very middle class backgrounds and suddenly have a lot of wealth and are also conscious about what's happening in society. So for them, I would suggest that first, the most important thing in giving is you have to give to a cause where you have which you have a passion for. There are thousands of good causes. It doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest burning problem in the country. There are so many others that you can find that you need solutions for. So therefore, I would say that that's the first thing, is to have passion. Second, I would suggest is that they should go for associate with those people whom they have confidence in or who they acquire confidence in, and therefore go and meet people, see the work that they're doing, and then decide, depending on who the individual is. As much as the cause, it's also the individual behind that which is important. The third thing is that, yes, one must give money, but giving time is also as important, because that's where the real engagement comes. It's money you give once, you very often tend to forget about it. But how do you engage? How do you get the joy that I spoke earlier? How do you get that satisfaction? Is when somebody spends, in addition to money, time as well. So the question often asked to me is that why do we support our own foundation which we run, and actually or why do we also support other foundations, whether it's Pratham or whether it's Anamrit, the midday meal program of ISKCON. So as I said before, the way we select a cause is that, first of all, we should have a passionate belief in it. So I do believe, for instance, that education makes a huge difference. And I also believe that midday meal is a very important component, not only of education, but about feeding itself to people who don't get the right amount of, the quality of food is important. So that's why these were the programs which Pratham and the Anamrit program were doing. Also then, as I said, it's the people that are behind it, and both have people of high integrity, very competent, and have had an established track record. So we support them because we feel that in addition to supporting a good program, I think because of the experience that we've had in management and in running businesses, we can do a little bit better in these organizations and help them to do better than before. So not only do we give money, but we are deeply involved in running of these organizations, in helping them to deliver more than what they were doing earlier. So the purpose of our group is doing well and doing good. And our group means not only the work that we do in our businesses, but also in all the philanthropic activities we do. So according to me, I don't look at it differently whether you run a business or whether you run a philanthropic activity. Both must be run well and be comparable to the best standards, and both must deliver good. And therefore, let's say for the program that we have on education, which is in the Piramal Foundation for Education Leadership, we are measuring, for instance, the output of what is the learning levels, and we get it measured independently from outside agencies to see, are we making a change? We use all the management principles to say select the people, the fellows that we want to recruit. We have appraisal systems for all of them. We have plans for them. We have budgets for them. We have strategies. So everything that you would do in a business. So according to me, there is no difference whether you run a business or whether you run a philanthropic activity. Sometimes in a business, you don't always measure outcome in the first few years, because then say it's an evolving business, it's a new business, rather than measuring outcome, you may just measure what are the activities that you are doing that will lead to an outcome in 5 years. I believe the same is true for all philanthropic foundations as well. So sometimes people, I think, put unnecessary pressure in the early days of foundations that you have to show some benefit. It can't happen overnight. It does not happen in a business. It doesn't happen in a philanthropic activity. So to me, they are both the same. You look at it same. What have been the lessons learned in philanthropy activity that we've done? I think first is that you have to back the right people. And that is whether you're doing it on your own and you need to recruit the right people, or you have to have organizations which have the right people behind them. My experience also is that these people, the right people, are those who don't work in it for the money. They must work for the passion. And they must, if they're always going to think about money and be conscious about money, then I don't think they bring in the same, impact on the organization. The third thing, as I said, my learning has been that you don't start measuring output on the first day that you start a philanthropic activity. You have to give it time. Fourth, I think, is one has to be tolerant for mistakes. You can't, and we have to encourage people. They can't be successful. The problems in India are too deep, and for hundreds of years, people have not yet solved them. So you can't expect anybody to just come and do it. So these are some of my learnings. Which is the area that we focus on, let's say in education. We realize that there is a lot of work that's taking place in education. But let's say one thing that we realized was not being addressed is the question of leadership. We all are in business, and we realize that what makes a difference between a good company and an average company is the quality of leadership. And if we were to apply the same principle, then it's the quality of leadership in a school that would make a difference. It's the quality of leadership in a country that makes a difference. And hence we looked at, and we were actually surprised to find that in government schools, there was no training to become a leader. A headmaster became a headmaster by sheer seniority, and therefore not equipped to do that role. We've gone through MBAs and all that. So if we needed all this training, why shouldn't the headmaster need it? That was one feeling, and therefore we started training headmasters. We also realized that few leaders can make a difference in the whole country. Swami Vivekananda said several decades ago that give me 1,000 Indians and I will change the face of the country. We also believe if he said it, it must be true. And since then, the population has gone up about 5 times. So we say that we will create 5,000 young leaders, which will ultimately go to change this country. And therefore, we are developing this fellowship today, and we hope that in the next 5 or 6 years, we'll get to that number, 5,000. There's been a lot of change in philanthropy in the last few years. First of all, I've seen that there's much more wealth that has been created in this country in the hands of individuals than it was before. Also, wealth has been created in the hands of very young people. Thirdly, I think that there are many young people who feel that their mission in life is not to just go and work somewhere, but to make a positive difference to the world around them. So that, I think, it was not so much earlier. I think in the time when we were growing up, and in our parents' generation, everybody just wanted to see that, they could lead a decent life, and, for them and for the next generation. Now, so that's one thing. Also, now people feel that they don't have to look after the next generation as much as the elders did, because the next generation itself can manage themselves. They are more educated, they are more confident, and so on. So that's been a big change, I think, which means that even the causes that people are taking, they are becoming let's say they're taking much more risk in the causes. Earlier, people would, philanthropy was, whether it was in a hospital or whether it was in a temple or whether it was in a school, that is what. But now there are so many other causes people are willing to take up. So that's been a big change. What do I see in the future? I think that we are on the right track. I can see more and more people getting engaged in it. It's organizations like yours also which are spreading the word that will help getting more people engaged at various levels.